training others and seeing literally there's babies and books and businesses and marriages and divorces and all these things that have come to life because I chose me and I chose
Mm,
to actually do what I'm here to do. So it's a gift and an honor to be able to impact people's lives in that way. And now to train others so that there's more impact in the world because the world needs it. Healing,
seriously.
right? We need
Yeah.
the
Oh,
healing.
yeah. Hey, guys. Welcome to episode number 226 of the Game On Girlfriend podcast. Today, I get to bring you Anat Peri. She is so cool. I'm just going to come right out and say it. This woman has dedicated her life to teaching people how to heal, specifically when it comes to generational trauma. And you might be thinking, Miss Walton, why does this matter when it comes to running a business? Well, because we're not compartmentalized human beings when we choose not to heal the things that are pulling at us, the things that keep us anxious and upset, or the stories we tell ourselves over and over. I'm not good enough. This isn't going to work. I've already tried this, those sorts of things. All that comes from things we haven't healed yet. And so working with someone like Anat is such an opportunity for us to examine where we are still being held back by things we may not even realize are running the show. This is going to be an episode where I'm going to encourage you to maybe take notes. She is going to walk us through the 5 stages of actual healing. What I want you to listen for is what steps you may have missed yourself. I know I certainly found that as she was sharing what the 5 stages are. And I think it can help us all sort of understand where things have been a little crunchy, where things haven't been moving forward, and what we can do about it. She also actually, pay attention to this, gives us a timeline for how long it takes to truly heal, not just to recognize that there's something to heal, but then to actually start to implement the healing process by taking different actions. So cool. So make sure you keep a listen for that. Anat Peri is the CEO and founder of Training Camp for the Soul and renowned creator of Master Facilitator of the TCS method. Anat Peri is an inner child healing expert in the coaching and wellness space, and she's devoted her life to empowering those at the forefront of the coaching industry to scale their businesses, overcome overwhelm, yes, please, build confidence, and master their craft while attracting their ideal clients. Her approach to healing and personal growth isn't merely informative, it's a profound experience that curates lasting change. So if you've been wondering what's going on with you, if you find yourself in the same habits over and over, business, personal, or even like emotional and spiritual, this is going to be an episode you are going to want to save and come back to a couple of times. The one question I hope you really listen for, and the coaching that she gives around it, is the question, what did you need? Listen for it. Pop in those earphones and let's get to it. Anat, welcome to the Game On Girlfriend podcast. I have a feeling we have a lot of people with some perked up ears about the topic of healing today. Welcome.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me. Hey, girlfriend.
Hi, girlfriend. Yeah, listen. Okay, so I'm really excited to jump in with you. You guys don't know this, but Anat and I have been chatting off camera for a little bit here. We've been having such a great time, and there's so much good content coming your way in just a few minutes. But Anat, before we jump into the 5 steps of healing and the safety strategies that entrepreneurs tend to use when we're dealing with all of the growth and healing that's necessary to be an entrepreneur, before we jump into that, why? Out of all the things on planet Earth that Anat could be known for, all the things you could be doing, why is healing what you really chose to study and to bring to the world?
Yeah, so it was something that always my friends came to me for when I was a teenager, like advice. I mean, God knows what I said back then. If I was the fly on the wall, I'd be like, oh, geez. But whatever it was, it always created a sense of peace for them. So there was always an interest, and I wanted to major in psychology. I was so fascinated by it, but I hated traditional schooling and the idea of like 8 years of school. I was like, oh no way. So I gave that up. I put it to the side and said, oh, I'll just do what my dad did. I'll just go the route of business and finance instead. And when it's your purpose, it finds you no matter what because you
Mm.
feel this like burning desire inside. And so I did give up on that and go the route of business and finance and worked in financial services in my early 20s. And then self development found me anyway when I
Mm.
was 25. And actually, 2 days from now, so January 7th, will be 19 years since my first self-development program that I ever did. And when I stepped foot into that program, I just instantly felt at home. I
Mm,
felt like I just love witnessing people have these breakthroughs, discover who they really are. So I just knew that I was at home with it.
mm,
And I didn't start my business for another 10 years from that. And it was mainly because I felt like an imposter
yeah.
at times. Honestly, I have no regrets about that because I was seeking the healing and the right tools myself. As much as I wanted to help other people, I actually went into my first self development program with my mother, did it
Yeah.
together. And it was like, perfect. You'll see. I'm right. You're wrong, mom. Like it was that, like, okay, I'm going to do this to show you where you're wrong. What a gift she is in my life because all the trials and struggles that we've had have really helped me reconnect to
Mm,
myself, my purpose. And so a lot of it was like me looking to discover myself first. And it took 10 years, and it
yeah.
doesn't have to take 10 years. And nowadays, with our access to Instagram and so many great programs and coaches, it's not like it was 19 years ago.
Mm,
It took me that long because a lot of the tools that I was being exposed to were cognitive, weren't getting to the depth of where healing is. And
mm,
healing isn't just in the mind, it's in the body as well. So important that they work cohesively together. And so it just took me that long. But when I met my mentor and I experienced what true transformation is, which is not a walk in the park on a beautiful sunny day. It's a walk through a burning forest and there's dragons to slay. So it's like, it's messy, it's uncomfortable, it's scary, it's painful, it's all the feels, it's the full spectrum of our feelings and our emotions. I was like, okay, so now I'm actually getting somewhere here with this. Yeah. So
and what had
it
you like turn it into a business? I mean, that is an
mhm,
amazing journey. And I feel like it took me 10 years. It's funny you say that. From the moment when I was like, this is not my life's work, what I was doing, it took 10 years for me too. It's so funny. Interesting. We're both
yeah,
wearing green and it took us 10 years. But
green
tell me
blessings.
too, like, what had you turn it into bit? Like, what was that catalyst after 10
Yeah.
years? What was that moment
Yeah,
for
yeah,
you?
yeah. I mean, to struggle for 10 years with like, no self-esteem. I used to have constant anxiety. Like I
Mm,
felt like there was this black hole in my chest that I could not fill, being very codependent in my relationship, very needy, very clingy with my friends, incapable of really having a good relationship with my mother, attracting men that were emotionally unavailable. So it's like I struggled in a lot of
mm,
ways. And to reconnect to myself, to like feel my power again, to know how to fill that void and love myself, like truly love myself. When I got to that, I was like, I have the antidote. Like I have the key. And I
mm,
want to help other people. I've
mhm.
always enjoyed helping other people and witnessing other people. But I just felt like, how could I not? Like keep this now to myself after emerging from, from my pain, from my
Yeah.
struggles, it would be a disservice. Funny enough, when I started out, I went all in. Like I didn't keep a job. I just like finally like took
Wow.
the leap. But
That's
it's
courage.
10 years in the making.
Yeah.
And I borrowed $5,000 from my dad. And then I said, okay, don't ever give me another penny again because I need to know that there's no back door, like that I have to keep going
Mm,
at this. And I was not into marketing. I had a background in sales, so I was good with that. But social media was not what it was now.
yeah.
So I didn't have a website, no social media presence. I didn't even change it on my Facebook page because I was like, still like, well, but who am I to do that? Like, am I really doing this thing? So I was very private about it and it just grew organically. I was always a natural networker. I think it's just the age that I'm at. That's what we used to do. We used to network in person. And I did six figures my first year from
That's
word of mouth
incredible.
because the work worked. And I mean, I didn't have a website or social media presence for 3 years. I did $500,000 in my business
Wow. And that was
before.
without those like you must haves, right? I love that you did that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. I
beautiful.
mean,
Beautiful.
yes, to this day, it's still like my community of clients, they still always praise this work and how much it changed their life. And, if you want to scale, And in this day and age, you don't need a website, but you do need to, do some kind of social media and all that. So learning that now, or have
Mm.
been learning it the past few years.
Oh, we're all still learning it, by the way. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started out very much, I remember saying, "Hey, God, like if this is where you want me to serve, then bring me those that need my medicine." Like
Mm,
literally a month into my business, into like starting, I was like, I don't know how I'm doing this, but I was 35, 36 at the time. And I was like, I have a history of failing in careers that weren't me. So I'm take this one on. This one really feels right. And if it's meant to be, please show me that. Please like
mm,
work with me. And it's been a real blessing. And not that there haven't been challenges and room for growth over the years, but that's how I started out. And I
mm.
started out just coaching. And I never had the plan to be where I'm at today, which is now I mentor other coaches and healers. I have a certification program. That was not part of my plan at all. That was my client saying to me, "This is incredible. I need to learn from you. I need to learn to do
Mm,
what you do." And 5 years in, I was like, okay, I've heard this enough. Let me figure out what my method is, all
mm.
that, and launched that during lockdown, during COVID.
Oh, that's
And,
great. Probably
and
when people really needed it, right? It was
they
probably
did.
that moment of like, here's some medicine for what's actually happening in your life. That's gorgeous.
Yeah. Yeah. And now there's definitely parts of business that are such a pain in the butt that make me want to be like, can I just quit?
I know. I always do the joke. I think I'm going to go work at Starbucks, right? There's so many tasks that have to
Yeah.
get done in order for a business to function well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But to see the impact of now, like, no, I've gone too far. And now
Mm,
training others and seeing literally there's babies and books and businesses and marriages and divorces and all these things that have come to life because I chose me and I chose
mm.
to actually do what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
So it's a gift and an honor to be able to impact people's lives in that way. And now to train others so that there's more impact in the world because the world needs it. Healing,
Seriously.
right? We need
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
healing.
I mean, we know, I mean, given the state of the world at the moment, right? Hurt people. And I think the more that we can heal, the more that we can extend moments, eras, eons of peace and joy and prosperity instead of the despair and the struggle. I personally just believe that healing is at the crux of all of that. But what I hear in your story too, Anat, is an extraordinary amount of faith mixed with courage,
Hmm.
mixed with clarity. I really hear a lot
Yeah,
of clarity, and God bless the 10 years, right? That it took to
yeah.
really hit that moment of clarity. And I think that combination for you was just borderline magical. But I love too what you said
Yeah.
about as being a woman, especially in today's world, being a woman, you chose you. And I love that
Hmm.
phrase that you keep saying. I love that. I chose me. Beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, and I want more people to choose themselves and ultimately to end the generational trauma. Like if I were to sum it up in
Mm,
one word, like why do you do what you do? Because I know that I am here, like that my purpose here is to support and ending generational trauma.
gorgeous. Please, would you? That would be wonderful. I am 100% behind your mission. And as we jump into that, I know you have sort of as you figured this out, right? You went through this yourself. You really helped heal yourself. And I love the way that you talk about your relationship with your mom too. I love it. So good the generations, right? And how we connect to each other and how we view each other and how powerful it is to flip that from you're a pain in my neck to, oh my God, you're such a gift. But you have sort of discovered the 5 steps to healing. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? And like, is this the journey that you work with on people?
Absolutely. So it's the 5 stages, that same thing, 5 stages
5
of
stages.
healing.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And it's something that whether you're listening right now and you're just on your own healing journey, or you're a practitioner and you have clients, understanding this is going to show you either what stages you've skipped or, what are the stages to actually guide your clients through.
Ooh.
So, stage one is awareness. And obviously, everyone comes with some level of awareness, step into their own healing or to hire a practitioner to go through healing. It's like, oh, I want to fix this thing. But there's so much depth and exploration, even just in that stage of like, what safety strategies do you use that are having you continue to be stuck with this thing? How are you protecting yourself what are the limiting beliefs that are running the show here? And what did you learn? Like, who did you learn this from? This mom's energy or dad's energy. I work a lot in the space of, inner child healing and understanding that not who I am, it's what I learned. And if I learned it, I can unlearn it. And that
Mm,
everything was learned by either what we saw, heard, or felt energetically by the time we were seven. Predominantly, your script was written by then. And
wow.
so in awareness, it's like it's a deep exploration. Like when I teach this to my clients in my certification program, it's like, don't rush the stage. It isn't like a client walks in and says, I want a better blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, cool, let's go. It's like sometimes it's a few sessions where you're really exploring what, increasing their awareness. That
I
is
love that. So
a
that's stage
snippet
one.
of yeah, snippet
Okay.
of stage one. And it's also, a place where if you yourself are just on your own healing journey, where can you explore this deeper? You can bring it a practice to grabbing your journal and imagining you're talking to your very best friend, but instead of talking to your best friend, it's the journal. And so, when you talk to your bestie, there's no filter. You could say anything. So same thing, like no filter, just dump everything that's showing up for you, that's triggering you, that you're stuck in, and then go back and circle anywhere that you wrote, I am dot dot dot. I feel dot dot dot. I feel like dot dot dot. Because
Mm,
that's gonna connect you to what I call the inner child. Your
okay.
inner child is your emotions. It's the part of you that feels, whether it's happy, horny, or scared, anxious, angry. And it's the part of you that is holding all those limiting beliefs. And
Mm,
so a lot of times there's a lot of noise in our head. There's many characters. It's like having dinner with an Italian family. You only hear the loudest one. A lot of
mm,
times it's not the inner child that we're hearing. We're hearing our protector, which is our ego. We're hearing the inner critic. And so doing this exercise is a way that you yourself can tap into the awareness of what you actually need to bring to consciousness, what needs tending to. So
mm.
that's a
Oh, I love
little
that
little
question.
stage.
Oh, and not that's really great. Like what needs attention right now? And like what needs tending to? That's yeah, that's a really
Yeah,
important question. And
yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like
yeah.
sometimes we get so busy to not address what needs to get tended to, Like
Right.
that's such a
And
great question.
And
Mm,
exactly, when we get busy not tending to it, then this
yeah.
is where our ego takes over. And I want to reframe how people see their ego. Your ego is your amigo. Your ego is your friend. Your ego is actually the ultimate protector. So you want to think about when you're not tending to a child, that child needs a sitter, needs a protector, right? And so when we don't take time to discover our inner child and what needs tending to, then our ego steps in and says, I'll protect you. But
Mm,
the ego's way of protecting is not tending, it's distracting you from the internal and putting the focus external. So that external could be distractions like, oh, I'll just watch a movie or scroll Instagram or eat some ice cream. I'm going to compare myself to others, where the ego says, but prettier than her, you're better than him, you're competitive, competing. And so
yeah.
it's not really healing, just protecting, it's just masking. So we could get caught in that.
Yeah.
And there's many people that you see out in the world that are ego
Oh,
driven, that are
oh,
stuck in
please.
that.
Well, I mean, and I think we all kind of journey in and out of it, even in a day,
For
right? You can
sure.
have a morning where you're like amazing, and then by noon you're like, I'm the best, and you know what, I'm better than that. Like, we all just
Yeah.
flow in and out of it. I think it's really
Yeah.
part of our human condition.
Yeah. I mean, I grab the ice cream. I want to like distract myself sometimes and not feel what's there and just scroll social media.
Yes, please.
So
I mean, no,
it
not really. I actually never feel better, but yes, right? Yes, we
we
all do
don't
that.
actually
Yeah,
feel better. We
yeah,
mask it, we stuff it down, we avoid it, but it gets louder, just like a child in the back seat that wants your attention. If you don't give it to them, they're just going to get louder and
right.
louder. And a lot of times, sadly, that's what it takes for people is they
Mm,
don't
mm,
listen to the feather, right? They need the Mack truck. We need to
right.
fall, like hit ground zero. That was me 11 and a half years ago. I left a 5 year codependent relationship. I left New York City. I was $40,000 in debt, $2,000 to my name, no self worth, no self love. And hopping on a plane to California with no job, no car, no home, one girlfriend in San Diego, and no plan.
Wow.
I hit my ground zero. This was
Oh,
September 15th of 2012. And I remember saying to myself, well, can't fall off the floor. So it's only up from here.
I can't believe I've never heard that before. That is so good, Anat. Well, here we are, and we're not getting any lower than this. That is wonderful. Okay. So
Yeah,
you do this huge thing. You did it though. Again, we're going back
I
to
did
courage
it.
and faith seem to be really
Yeah,
big drivers in living inside of healing,
yeah,
right? Courage and faith.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have the full healing then yet. But again, when you're at ground zero, you're like, well, what do I got to lose? I was like,
Let's
I don't want to
go.
live in New York
Yeah.
anymore. I don't want these jobs anymore. I don't want this relationship anymore.
Mm,
I just
mm.
knew I wanted to live in California. So I'm like, well, that's a plus, that's a start.
I love
And then
it.
I let go of like, living on the East Coast in New York.
Mhm,
There's a cockiness. There's this like, you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And I was
mhm,
so in my masculine, so much in like force and push and all that. And oh, I know what's best for me. And hitting ground zero, I got humbled. Like, I don't know shit. And I
mm,
remember I got to California and I was like, God, I don't know anything. So like take over. Like I'm gonna learn what it is to surrender. And yeah, the miraculous took over from there for
mm,
sure. So there's a
mm.
lot of gifts and it's not easy to surrender, but when you hit ground zero, yeah. So anyhow, sometimes that's what it takes, right? We live so much in our ego, so much in illusions. I was not listening to my inner child,
Mm.
and I was that summer. I was eating ice cream every night. I don't even like sweets that much. I was like borderline depressed
Yeah.
because I abandoned myself that much.
And all of that, like, is all of that part of the stage of awareness? Like, is that really like that
Yeah,
self-abandonment, the hitting the floor? It sounds to me,
yeah,
but like wakening up, awaken, and all of that being part of the
yeah.
awareness stage. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
right?
being willing.
Okay.
Sure, yeah, because if you took
Yeah.
time every day to actually just connect with your journal bestie, right?
Mm,
If you said, "Hey, I'm just gonna dump out everything that I'm feeling and thinking right now," and then being the observer of that as you read it back to yourself and actually identify that inner child. And anywhere that you write, "I want," that's your heart. But your
mm.
access to your heart is your inner child. Your access to your creativity is your inner child. Think about a child when they're upset. They don't want to play, but as soon as they move through their upset,
They're
they're
game.
creating again. They're
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
Same thing for us. So the access to what you want is through actually feeling through all that stuff.
Mm,
So if you just took on that practice every day, you'd start to hear yourself. So
mm.
that's stage one. Stage two is acceptance. It may sound like, oh, okay, yeah, I just need to accept. This is the hardest stage for people to get past. And it's the stage that where a lot of times people need the most support and hand holding. I think it's why
Mm.
people hire coaches. It's
Yeah.
this because acceptance means letting go that there's anything to fix or change. And most of the time, there's still this programming in us to judge it and want it to change. Like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I hear you and not, but like, okay, so like, can I fix this? And it's like, no, it's not about that. It's about being with it with nothing
Mm,
to change, nothing to fix. And therefore, learning to expand your nervous system's capacity to handle more, to
mm.
be with more. Because all that life is handing us, whether it's challenges or opportunities, creates some experience, some energy, some emotion, sensation in our body. And if you're accustomed to it, if you grew up with that energy, then it's familiar.
I see. Yeah.
But if you didn't, then it's like, I don't know what to do with this. How do I fix this? Some people, it's normal for them to live in chaos and anxiety. That
Right.
feels familiar. And they have their safety strategies around that. Like for me, that was me for many years. And my strategy for it was to be codependent, was to depend on others and
Mm.
to get others to fulfill my needs. But it's a dead end eventually. But then being in like peace and harmony, suddenly you're hyper vigilant and you self sabotage it because
Mm.
it's unfamiliar to our nervous system because you didn't grow up in that. And so in this stage, it's learning to observe what is happening at the level of sensation. So we
Mm.
label things as good or bad.
Right.
And I feel this way. How do I fix it?
Mhm.
Instead of where do you feel it in your body? And
Mm.
describe the sensation and observe the sensation. Sensations is the language of the nervous system. So when you speak in sensations, there's no good or bad, right or wrong. There just is. And the nervous system is able to start processing and digesting it. And therefore, you're starting to build capacity around your energy. And you become what I call an energetic Jedi. It's like, and if you can master all the different sensations that arise, and again, free of judgment, the judgment
Mm.
comes when we label it as good or bad. And emotions are like, oh, happy, horny. Yes, more of that, please. Anxious,
Right.
nervous. How do I fix this? Instead of, oh, let me get curious here and let me be
Mm.
with it. Where do I feel this? And what is this part trying to say to me?
Mm.
And how much can I let it be there? And it
Mhm.
still comes up for me. I was in something the past week. This new year brought up a lot of stuff for me because I feel like this is a very pivotal year for me in my life. But I was like, oh my God, this is so much to handle. And I didn't try and rush out of that. It took probably about 4 days. I think yesterday is when I felt like it chose to shift
Mm.
instead of I needed it. So how much can we be in acceptance
That's
without trying
that's
to fix it or change it? So it
yeah.
really gives you your nervous system time to be the one to acclimate and process it.
It's lovely. I love this idea of expanding the nervous system's capacity because, those of us that were raised in very either cacophonous or there's hidden abuse, right? All I always say the unspoken family rules, all that stuff is feeding into the nervous system. So I love this idea of expanding the nervous system's capacity to be. And then something came up as you were talking. I just wanted to ask you, is this stage of acceptance, is this the
Mhm.
same as surrender or is there a nuance to acceptance versus surrender?
Hmm, great question. There's definitely a layer of surrender,
Mm.
but I like acceptance because it's like bring curiosity, compassion, and love to it. Like, can you embrace this part? So much so, a lot of times in my sessions with clients, I'll tell them, marry the energy, like, go into it. Like, sometimes they'll even be like, oh my God, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I'm like, yes, don't swallow right now. Don't, instead of swallowing, ride it. So I want you to think about acceptance like you're
Mm.
in the ocean, the West Coast, right? And there's waves and there's different size waves. And
Mm.
so your role in acceptance is you learning to ride the wave instead of being afraid of it and dunking your head
I see.
under or just freezing, you're riding it. And so you're
Mm.
learning to ride the wave of your emotions.
Oh, that's really
Mm-hmm.
cool. That's a great analogy because I love talking about emotions so much because I think they're such powerful indicators. But the idea of embracing them and marrying them, and I always have the definition that love is 100% acceptance. So, right, of the other person or of ourselves, or that
Yeah,
is the true stage of love, right? Of just like this being of like, you are exactly the way you are, the end.
yeah,
Like, that's
yeah,
it, nothing to fix or change. So I love this idea of our emotions. And as we expand our nervous system and its capacity, that we're also bringing such a strong energy of love to it. This is so
yeah.
gorgeous.
Yeah. So I love that you said that also because sometimes in loving, right? Like I'm married and there's parts that you just have to love about someone or loving things from your past. Like when you're dealing with someone who maybe had a horrible experience with one of their parents growing up and you're telling them to accept that.
Mm.
This is where they need so much holding because in accepting, this new wave comes up of
Mm.
like to accept that means I have to feel this part. And it's like, yep, exactly. That's the wave that's coming. And as you allow yourself to feel that part, your nervous system expands and you're no longer afraid of that type of energy because that energy is going to come up again in your life. You and I are both old enough to know that life
Yeah.
doesn't stop handing you challenges and opportunities for growth. And so becoming resilient is going to come from learning to train our nervous system to handle all these different triggers, emotions, sensations that come up. And it's like loving what is. And
Hmm.
I love what is.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. So after awareness and acceptance, What is the third stage that we can expect as we're healing?
Third stage is getting to the root. And this is like a deeper exploration, and it kind of ties into some of the discovery in awareness of, well, who did you learn this from? Because you have this as fixed, like, this is who I
Mm,
am. Consider, like, whose energy is this? Is this mom's? Is this dad's? And mom represents an extension of self. So you learn everything about how to treat yourself, talk to yourself, see yourself from mom. You either copy or you rebel or you create a way to survive. And dad represents everything that is not the self, the world, others, relationship with
mm,
others, career. And, that's a whole podcast in and of itself. But
I'm
I could
sure.
tell you from thousands of sessions with clients, it's accurate. And sometimes it's both mom and dad.
Mm,
So
okay.
it's not so simple. It's definitely a place where there's a lot to possibly explore. But
Mm,
yeah, being in that exploration of, like, who modeled this to me? Whose energy is this? And if it's mom, then, like, a lot of times in getting to the root, it's like, do you remember time? Or can you imagine a time when you experienced this from mom? And getting connected to what it was like for your younger self to witness that or experience that. And of course, you're not going to do this with big T trauma. You're not going to have someone revisit the time when they were, God forbid, molested. But for the most part, with a lot of the reparenting and beliefs that we have to reprogram, you can revisit and reparent and give yourself what you needed in that
mm,
moment. And so it is that exploration so that you start to free yourself. I just did a post on this where I had a client who had a eating disorder. And when she came to me, she was like, I've worked with coaches before, and, I've gotten all the tips about that I should, manage what I eat and clean out my fridge and,
mm,
avoid these snacks and do all these things, like all this stuff to control it. But
mhm,
she never really explored the root of it. And we explored, like, where, what's the belief that's there. And she's like, I don't like my body the way that it is. It's not
mm.
enough. I said, where did you first hear that? And she goes, oh, when I was little. She remembers. Suddenly remembers. My aunt said to me, when you lose weight, I'll buy you that dress.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
I go, what did you need from her in that moment?
Mm.
She's like, I just needed unconditional love and acceptance. I needed her to buy me that dress in whatever size I was.
Whatever size I needed.
And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was in that
Mm,
he then reparenting the self,
mhm.
the mother, reparenting the mother in us is giving yourself what you always needed. So what did you need from her? I needed unconditional love and acceptance. And so that became then her reparenting, her practice of holding herself and giving herself that. And she wept as
Oh,
she, for the first time, because we don't realize how unconsciously we talk to ourselves. And
absolutely.
if you've never
Yeah.
said to yourself, like, I see you, I love you, you're enough just as you are, then the very first time you say
Mm,
that, it's
mm,
gonna, like, she wept
mm,
around it. But that was the shift where she realized, if I practice this every day, like, yeah, I just get to love myself how I am. And then, the body may change or it may not, but she shifted that. So anyhow, the
that's the
getting to the
root.
root,
I
that's
mean,
the root.
like,
That's
I
the root.
love that you were able, like, you just shared with us a moment. I think the I don't know if you heard my audible gasp, right? I could absolutely picture that happening to so many
Mm-hmm,
girls anywhere in the world, right?
mm-hmm,
That
mm-hmm.
drop in the bucket phrase that nobody pays attention to, and it alters everything. And having that be that root moment, that was
Yeah,
such a wonderful illustration of how that happens and where I want to say the break in self, not that the person's broken, but the break from self in that moment, right? Of like, I'm
exactly.
not enough
Yeah,
in
yeah.
that
Or
self-betrayal.
sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, oh, whose energy is this? Oh, this is mom's energy. This
Mm,
is what mom believed about herself.
right.
Oh, okay. So what happened when you witnessed mom feeling this way about herself? Oh, I didn't want to see her that way. So the
Mm,
child merges with mom and becomes, starts parenting mom in that way.
mhm.
And this particular client, she realized she took it on as hers. Then it's her belief.
Got it.
So when we get to the root, we are really discovering who we are versus what we learn. Yeah. And, for me, in my 10 years of my self development journey before I got to the root, I never touched on stage two or stage three or stage 4, which we'll talk about in a sec. And I think a lot of work out there, that's the challenge, is that we're going from awareness, and usually it's not even the deep level of awareness, it's like the surface awareness of
Mm,
what we think the problem is. So what happens in stage 3 when people get to the root is there's some shift, whether it's a physical release of energy and the way that the nervous system releases and digests. I have clients that will start yawning. Like
yes.
I'm a yawner. When I'm
Yes.
yawning, 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 burping, of course, tearing. So not even crying, but it could just be tearing, but it could
Mm,
also be crying. Sometimes it's a cathartic, like you need to punch something or
hmm.
scream. Sometimes
Move.
it's just your body getting hot and cold flashes,
Mm,
or tremoring, or it's
mhm.
like shaking it out, or sometimes it's just like the light bulb just comes on and it just shifts, gone. So that all happens in stage 3. And then stage 4 is about reparenting and rewiring. This is a lot of times where people that have done shadow work, or if you do breath work, or if you do
Mhm.
plant medicine, you can get to having big releases. You could get to stage 3. A lot of times people aren't remembering to then replace. You're
Okay.
clearing the energy out, but are you actually planting something new in? Are you
Mm,
rewiring? Are you declaring what's possible and available now that wasn't before, for yourself, with yourself? If this is a self learning, mother learning,
love it.
or what's
Yeah.
possible with others or out in the world that wasn't before, if it's something that you learned from father. And so it's editing the script and then giving a new direction. Because if you don't
Mm,
give a new direction, then you're going to default. I've met so many people that have done breath work, and I love breath work. It's a powerful tool. And I've done plant medicine, and I've been that person that did plant medicine. And it's like, oh, you have this big release. But if you don't go out in the world and now give a new command, a new direction, you're just going to reinforce the old. And so
mm,
people get addicted to the release. Like,
mm.
oh, I love having a big, powerful release in my breathwork session, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, now you found a new, healthier addiction, but you're still not making lasting change and
Mm,
transformation.
I love that. It's kind of reminding me of that phrase like the universe hates a void, right? So we clear it out, but if it's empty, it's going to get filled right back up again
Right
if
back
we don't
in.
fill it
And
up.
we're
I
gonna
love it.
and we're
Yeah.
gonna default. We're gonna
Yeah.
default to the things that are habitual to
Right.
us
And comfortable, right?
and
Even if
comfortable.
it's yucky, but it's what we know, we'll go right back to it. Yeah. That makes total
Exactly. So
sense.
having a
Okay.
new declaration, a new affirmation that then leads into stage 5, which is integration, education, and stabilization.
Ooh, okay. It's
So
almost like learning how to walk again is what that sounds like
it is.
walk in this new understanding of your
It
world.
I love that you said that, because I use the metaphor a lot of your life is a movie and you've been playing certain archetypes, certain
Mm,
roles. And you've also been casting people to play certain roles in your movie. So now here you are editing the script, introducing a new main character. And a main character has a big role and a lot of lines to learn. It's not just going to happen overnight, that
mm,
integration. It's going to take time and practice. You talk to any actor, you may see them winning that Oscar. Do you know how many hours they spent to
right.
study that character, that role, that script? If they could do it and win that Oscar, so can you. We get to bring that same practice in of practicing that new belief and integrating it into our life. So, how does someone that has this belief show up every day? What actions can I take? So, it's a lot about taking action.
Mm,
It's also about education, because you may be stepping into a role here that you've never played before. Just like actors that maybe they play, takes on a role as a psychopath, but they've never played that role. They actually have
right.
to spend time watching movies and studying that type of character. The
Mm,
same thing. If, let's say, being vulnerable is, which was one of mine, stepping into vulnerability, I was like, okay, cool, I am vulnerable. Great declaration, but what the fuck does that look like?
right. Where do I go for that?
I don't have a framework for it.
Right.
So this is where education comes in. This is where you can read the book on it. You can listen to the podcast on it. You
Mm,
can find someone that models it already and copy
mm,
from the best. to educate yourself. And then the stabilization happens. And for main characters, like when you're looking at the big shifts, if you're shifting from being a people pleaser your whole life to finding your voice and having boundaries, you're looking at about 18 months
Oh, got
fully
it. Okay.
integrated.
That's
Okay.
actually really helpful to know because I do think, like you've
Mhm,
already said, people can
mhm.
want to skip stages. But I think also, especially in our immediate gratification world, people are like, well, why isn't my life changed yet? Like, you've been at this for three
Yeah,
weeks? You got your whole life
yeah,
versus 3 weeks, right? Like,
exactly. Or
gonna take a
we
hot
judge
second.
ourselves,
Yeah.
we give up, and it's not a question
Mm,
of whether you're gonna fall off the horse. You're gonna fall off the horse in stage 5. It's how quickly can you recognize it and get back in
mm,
alignment. And so it's that dance for those 18 months of like, oh, okay. And so it's just like planting a new seed in a garden. You can't just then leave it. You have to check on it every day and water it and give it the right amount of sunlight and all that before it germinates, starts to sprout, and then it starts to grow, but it's still fragile. But then 18 months later, it's solid. You're good. And you don't even remember what it was like to be that other person. And so I tell my clients and those listening, have a lot of great faith, compassion, and commitment for yourself in stage 5. It is the most important stage. It is where
okay.
lasting transformation happens. So you go to a great retreat or you go through a great program. I always tell my clients this at the end of, at the end of the program or at the end of the retreat. I'm like, congrats, welcome to the beginning.
Right. I know. And
Training.
now we
This
get
was
started.
just
Yeah.
this was just training, right? Like my business is
Right.
called Training Camp for the Soul. Like this was just the training. Now this is where the real work begins
Mm,
and you get to keep showing up for yourself.
love it.
So
I love
that's
it.
the
Oh,
5 stages. And so if you listen to that
gorgeous.
and you may be wondering like, oh, now I understand why I'm stuck with this thing still because I skipped
Mm,
these stages. Or if
yeah.
you're a practitioner, and I mean, gosh, there's so much more that I could say for practitioners. Like I have a module in my program for each stage and how to guide a client through
Oh,
it.
I'm
But
sure.
yeah, and you can't rush it. You have to go depending on how safe your client feels, how much nervous system capacity they have.
Mm,
You got to go as fast as their slowest part. Like you can't rush it. And a lot of times you'll spend a lot of time in stage 1 and stage 2. And then it goes faster from there as far as when you're working with a client. You
got
may
it.
not move through all 5 stages in a 90-minute session. And you may if it's something small, but if it's something major,
I could see that
sometimes
taking a while. Yeah, like, oh my gosh,
sometimes
there's so much,
like
and
it's like 4 sessions,
yeah.
but they get lasting transformation.
Mm,
And this is why
mm,
my clients say to me, after working with you, I didn't need another coach. I didn't need
right.
another tool. I didn't need another program. I had everything that I needed. That's what's important in this industry where there's slowed up since COVID.
Mhm,
Everybody wants
mhm.
to be a coach and a healer, which is great. We all I think want to do it for the right reasons, but making sure that like you're equipped so that you're actually doing your clients a service of getting them the deepest lasting results.
I love it.
Yeah.
And it is tough. We are in an unregulated industry. And so
Mm-hmm.
it can, people can call themselves a coach and not ever, I always say a coach's job is actually to affect human behavior, right? Like that's what a coach needs to do. It's
Yeah.
not just about talking. And so I love what you're saying about having it last. Stage 5 being the most important. It's where the rubber hits the road. It's where people start to really experience life in a new level. I think this is so glorious is the word I want to use. And in that, I've just had such a great time chatting with you today. But I want to know if someone's listening and they're like, holy cannoli,
Yeah.
I need me some more or not. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So Instagram is where I'm active and where I post a lot of valuable content. And if you follow me on there, then within a week, maximum to usually 24 hours, you will get a DM from me because I like to connect with all my followers. So I know like why the heck you're following me. Yeah. And then if you're looking to discover about my offerings and programs, you can check me out on there. You can also go to trainingcampforthesoul.com.
Love it. You guys, we are going to have the links to both Instagram and her website underneath this video if you're on YouTube, or in the show notes if you're listening in. Anat, I think we could have spoken for another 3.5 hours today, but I'm so glad we got to do this today and really dive into the 5 stages of healing. I think this is such powerful work on the planet right now, and I'm so glad that we got to spend some time together today. Thank you for being on the show with me.
Thanks, girlfriend.